Hey everyone, welcome back, and let me tell you, there is so much happening right now in the world of weather, and things are only going to get crazier as we move into March. We've got multiple big storms on the horizon across the United States, and the weather pattern is about to get a whole lot more active. In fact, even over the next week or so, we're already seeing signs of snowfall, isolated severe weather, and a real threat for flooding. So in today's forecast, we're going to take a deep dive into everything you need to know about the weather that's going to impact the U.S. in the days and weeks ahead. Trust me, there's a lot to cover, so stick with me. Let's start by talking about what's happening across the country right now, and things have definitely started to pick up in terms of activity. The most noticeable action this morning is happening near the Gulf Coast, where we've got a low-pressure system forming right around Texas and Louisiana. As that system takes shape, we're already seeing some showers and thunderstorms popping up along the Gulf Coast. And this activity is only going to increase as we move into later today and tomorrow. This system is on track to push eastward toward Florida, and when it does, it's going to bring the potential for isolated flooding and maybe even some severe weather. And here's where it gets really interesting. This system is actually going to behave in a way that's pretty similar to a tropical storm, but it won't technically be classified as tropical because the temperatures just aren't warm enough to support that kind of system. That being said, it's still going to pack a punch, and I'd expect gusty winds and heavy rain across parts of Florida heading into Monday. If you're in that area, definitely stay weather aware because this system could cause some localized flooding and strong winds as it moves through. But before we get into the details, hit the subscribe button, like this video, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for your support. Meanwhile, on the other side of the country, the Pacific Northwest is getting absolutely slammed by a major atmospheric river event. This is one of those situations where we're talking about an incredible amount of moisture being funneled in from the Pacific Ocean, and the result is going to be a ton of rain. In the next few days alone, parts of Washington, Oregon, and Northern California could see as much as 10 inches of rain, and that's just through early next week. When you get that much rain falling in such a short period of time, the risk for flooding and even landslides becomes very real. So if you're out on the West Coast, please take this seriously and stay safe. Avoid any flooded roads and be aware of rapidly changing conditions because this system is going to stick around for a while. We're shifting into an entirely different weather pattern than what we've been seeing through most of February. And I want to take a closer look at what's happened with the jet stream, because that's where a lot of this change is coming from. Right now, there's a pretty significant trough developing over the southern plains, and that's one of the big drivers behind the flooding rain and tropical storm-like conditions that we're expecting in Florida. This trough is going to stick around for the next few days, bringing waves of moisture and instability along with it. At the same time, the polar jet stream, which is typically responsible for bringing in cold air from Canada, has lifted far to the north. That means all of that Arctic air is staying well away from the lower 48 states, and as a result, we're seeing warmer than average temperatures across much of the Great Plains and southeast. In fact, we're heading into what I'd call a mini winter heat wave over the next several days, with above average temperatures expected across a huge portion of the country. But over on the West Coast, that atmospheric river is going to keep bringing rain and snow through Monday and Tuesday, and the moisture just keeps coming. As we move into the middle of next week, the overall weather pattern stays pretty similar. The subtropical jet stream remains far to the south, while the polar jet dips just enough to bring a little bit of cold air into the Midwest and Northeast. But for most of the U.S., those above average temperatures are going to stick around for the work week. Things really start to change, though, by Wednesday and Thursday, and that's when we're looking at the potential for multiple storm systems to develop. These storms will primarily target the Midwest, Ohio Valley, and the Northeast. And we're going to see the jet stream start to favor these fast-moving systems known as Alberta Clippers. These systems typically bring quick bursts of snow, rain, and sometimes even isolated severe weather, and I expect to see several of them through the end of February. Once we get into March, I think the weather is going to ramp up even more. We're looking at bigger, more powerful storm systems developing over the Pacific and moving across the Rockies. And when those systems make it into the Great Plains, we could be dealing with a serious mix of snow and severe weather. The first couple of weeks of March are going to be very active, and I think we're going to see a lot of warm and cold air clashing. And that's the perfect setup for some big-time storms. Right now, though, the immediate concern is the rain along the Gulf Coast, with heavy downpours expected in Louisiana and Mississippi. Over in the Pacific Northwest, we've got heavy rain and snow continuing from that atmospheric river event. And in the Northeast, there's already some light snow falling. By Monday, things shift a bit, as those showers and thunderstorms push into Florida, bringing the potential for heavy rain, gusty winds, and even an isolated tornado risk in southern Florida tomorrow afternoon. This system may not be tropical, but it's going to bring tropical-like impacts. So if you're in that area, stay weather aware. Looking ahead, we're also keeping an eye on a big blast of Arctic air that's going to push into the Midwest and Northeast by next weekend. Temperatures are going to drop fast and things are going to get very cold. Beyond that, the forecast becomes more uncertain, but one thing's for sure, we're going to see some big storms developing in early March, and I'll be here to keep you updated every step of the way. Now, the 8 to 14-day outlook is where things start to get really interesting. This covers March 2nd through the 8th, and we're seeing a cooling trend developing in the west. Typically, when that happens, it encourages warmth to push into the east, right? And I think we could be right around the corner from that after the first week of March. That said, cold air will likely stick around for the mid-Atlantic and Northeast for a little while longer. But I do think we're looking at a shift after this period. We're also expecting an uptick in precipitation across much of the east, some of it offshore, some moving through the nation, and we could even see a few clipper systems rolling through, which could bring some snow. We also just got a new 3 to 4 week outlook, and this lines up with the cooler temps out west and the warmth starting to spread eastward, especially into the central states and much of the southeast. The mid-Atlantic and northeast are sitting in more of an equal chances zone, but I wouldn't be surprised if this ends up looking warmer as we move closer. A big factor in this is the negative PNA setup. Basically, when it's cold in the west, it tends to push warmer air into the central and eastern parts of the country. Precipitation for this time frame is also expected to be above average for a lot of the east and the northwest. Looking back at the past 20 days of temperatures, from February 2nd to the 22nd, we can see that cooler conditions have really been the theme, especially in the northwest and the north central states. Even the Ohio Valley and parts of the northeast have had a pretty cold February overall. The southeast has held on to some warmth, but with colder air moving in over the next few days, even that area could cool off a bit. Now, if we zoom out and look at the past 90 days, basically the bulk of the winter, it's pretty clear what the overall pattern has been. We've had a warm southwest and western Canada, but the central part of the country down through the northern plains, Midwest, Great Lakes, and much of the east has been colder than normal. December, January, and February have all been below average for these areas, which is wild considering we had several warmer than average winters in a row before this one. So where are we heading from here? Well, in the short term, we're staying cold. We'll also see some storm opportunities, both snow and severe weather, and eventually I do think we'll shift into a warmer trend. As we move into the early part of this week, things stay pretty quiet, but by Sunday, we start seeing some features pop up. A storm system moves into the northwest, bringing snow to the northern Rockies and rain along the coastal areas. At the same time, there's a system developing in the Gulf, South Louisiana. Now, if the jet stream were dipping far enough south, this could easily turn into our next winter storms, but that's not happening. The jet stream is sticking too far north, and without that connection, this system just doesn't have what it needs to develop into anything major. By Monday, that Gulf system is more focused on Florida, and we have another storm approaching the northwest. There's also a strong system near the Hudson Bay in Canada, but most of the snow stays up there. As we head into midweek, around Wednesday, February 26th, we start to see a system developing over Indiana, bringing a mix of rain and snow. Behind it, colder air gets pulled in, and ahead of it, we'll see some warmer air pushing into the east. This sets up a more active period with potential for snow and even thunderstorms. Fast forward to the end of the month, and we're looking at a pretty interesting setup. Cold air gets pulled back in for the east while warmer air dominates the west. By Thursday night and Friday morning, we're really close to seeing some kind of snow event along parts of the East Coast. But everything is still just a bit too separated right now for it to come together. We'll keep an eye on that. As we move into early March, the pattern stays pretty active. A trough builds in the west, bringing more storms and cold air while the central states stay warmer and drier. The east remains cooler overall, but I do think that's going to start shifting pretty soon after the first week of March. By March 3rd and 4th, a strong storm system starts developing east of the Rockies. This could bring some interesting weather, possibly severe thunderstorms as warm, humid air surges north ahead of the system and colder air dives south behind it. This is definitely one to watch, especially for areas in the Midwest and Southeast. And as we look even farther ahead, taking all these long-range models with a grain of salt, of course, we see more opportunities for snow in the Midwest and Northeast, along with continued colder conditions through early March. But I really think that by the second week of March, we'll start seeing a shift toward warmer air, something both the models and the National Weather Service are starting to pick up on. So, what's the takeaway here? We've got some cold days ahead, more snow and storm chances on the table, and a likely warm up coming as we head deeper into March. Will we finally cash in on those big snow opportunities, or will we miss out? Only time will tell. Thank you so much for watching and hanging out with me today. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. It really helps out the channel. Leave a comment down below and let me know what kind of weather you're hoping for in your area. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell so you never miss a new video. I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.